Jai Shri Radhe, Har Har Mahadev. Like every other aspect of Akbar's reign, some historical texts try to boost Akbar as a great patron of arts, literature, and able men. As such, we are told that his court was adorned, among others, by 9 men who were veritable gems, whose luster shed additional glory on Akbar's benevolent (Sikh) reign. The evidence on record proves that they were all worthless pandars, stooges, flatterers, and opportunists who, by their abject subjection to Akbar's autocratic despotism, had ceased to have any conscience or scruples. At the outset, we have Akbar's own appraisal of the worthlessness of his ministers. He says, quote, "It was the grace of Allah that I found no capable minister, otherwise people would have considered that my measures had been devised by him." Unquote. Since Abul Fazl himself, one of Akbar's ministers and classified as a gem, has recorded Akbar's none too complimentary appraisal of his ministers, there should be no doubt that they were all lackluster gems, undeservedly boosted by doting historians. The 9 individuals, often classified as special gems (Sikh) of Akbar's court, are number 1 Abul Fazl, number 2 Abul Faizi, number 3 Todarmal, number 4 Mansingh, number 5 Mirza Aziz Koka, number 6 Abdul Rahim Khankhana, number 7 Birbal, number 8 Tansen, number 9 Hakim Humam. It is already mentioned that Akbar did not have the slightest regard for any of them. None of them had any memorial raised to him by Akbar, and none of them has ever been quoted or emulated by posterity. Now we will discuss about the gem number 1, Mia Abul Fazl Alami. He was the son of Sheikh Mubarak. He was born near Agra on January 14, 1551 AD and was ambushed and murdered at Crown Prince Jahangir's order on August 9 or 12 in 1602 AD while proceeding from Sarai Burki village to Antri. Antri is 6 miles away from Sarai Burki. Abul Fazl was an abar. Abar means an abandoned person. In Hindi it is a tadipar. His ancestor Sheikh Mast was a resident of Arabia. In the 9th century, his forefathers accompanied some Muslim invaders to Sindh. From there, Abul Fazl's grandfather Sheikh Khij, an itinerant fakir, moved to Nagaur near Ajmer. There, Sheikh Mubarak, father of Abul Fazl, was born. Soon after his birth, his father and other members of the family perished in a famine. Sheikh Mubarak, in his wanderings, reached Ahmedabad and stayed there for several years. Later, he moved to a village near Agra, taking shelter with a fakir, a Sunni, but later changed to the Shia sect. Reports of his being a debauchee were conveyed to Akbar. The latter means Akbar, out of hatred for the Shia sect, ordered Sheikh Mubarak's arrest. Sheikh Mubarak, convinced that Akbar would have him murdered, left his 2 young sons, Abul Faizi. Abul Faizi is the elder brother of Abul Fazl, and Abul Fazl at Agra, and turned a fugitive and fell to seek shelter with Salim Chishti, also a fakir. The younger too was Abul Fazl. He was introduced to Akbar in 1574 AD by his elder brother Abdul Faizi. Abul Fazl, when first introduced to Akbar in 1574 AD, he failed to make any impression on Akbar. Abul Fazl cursed his fate, since he was sure that once he got an opportunity to be near Akbar, he could worm his way into Akbar's heart. Expressing keen disappointment at being spurned by Akbar, Abul Fazl records in the Akbarnama, quote, "As fortune did not first assist me, I almost became selfish and conceited. The pride of learning had made my brain drunk with the idea of seclusion. The advice of my father, with difficulty, kept me back from outbreaks of folly. I was sick of the learned of my own land." Unquote. This shows how Abul Fazl hankered for a life of luxury and royal patronage at court. When Abul Fazl was introduced at court at Agra, Akbar was busily engaged with his preparation for the conquest of Bihar and Bengal. Abul Fazl attended court immediately on the emperor's return to Fatehpur Sikri, where Akbar happened to notice for the first time Abul Fazl in the Jami Mosque. Abul Fazl's innate knack for flattery, which ingratiated him with Akbar, Blochman notes in the preface to Aini Akbari, Volume 3, that, quote, "Abul Fazl has far too often been accused by European authors of flattery and even of willful concealment of facts damaging to the reputation of his master, means Akbar." Towards the end of 1589 AD, Abul Fazl's mother died. The other courtiers and Prince Salim alias Jahangir were against Abul Fazl. An unexpected visit by Jahangir to Abul Fazl gave him an excellent opportunity to charge Fazl with duplicity. On entering the house, he found, means Jahangir found, 40 writers busy in copying commentaries on the Quran. Ordering them to follow him at once, he took them to the emperor, means Akbar, and showing the copies, Jahangir said, quote, "What Abul Fazl teaches me is quite different from what he practices in the house privately," unquote. But this incident perhaps convinced Akbar that Abul Fazl was the right man to be kept at court, where Machiavellism was a dominant requirement. Towards the end of 1592 AD, Akbar promoted Fazl to Duhazari, means to a status of a commander of 2000 footmen. He now belonged to the great Amirs. In Islam, it is said, Umra-e-Kibar, at court. Fazl's father died at Lahore on Sunday, September 4, 1593, at the age of 90. 2 years later, his elder brother, Abul Faizi, also died at the age of 50, in October 5, 1595 AD. Later, I will describe it elaborately. In the 43 years of Akbar's reign, Fazl was sent on active service for the first time. Prince Murad had not managed matters very well in the Dakhin. Dakhin means Dakhin. And therefore, Fazl was sent to return with him, whose excessive drinking caused the emperor much anxiety. On the day that Abul Fazl arrived at the camp, 20 kos from Daulatabad, on the banks of Purna river, Murad died. Fazl continued the campaign. He entered into a treaty with Chand Bibi, the Amazonian regent of the Nizam Shahi kingdom of Ahmednagar. In the 47th year of Akbar's reign, Abul Fazl was recalled with intent to send him against Prince Salim, alias Jahangir, who was then in revolt and had set himself up as emperor in Allahabad. Hearing that Fazl had started from his camp in the south to counter his revolt, Jahangir asked Bir Singh Dev Bundela to ambush Fazl and slay him as he passed through the Bundela's Orchha principality. Fazl and his party were set upon from all sides, while Abul Fazl lay under a tree. Fazl received 12 wounds and was finally transfixed with a spear. His head was severed from the body and forwarded to Jahangir in Allahabad. Jahangir, with great glee, flung it in a heap of filth. That was perhaps deserved divine punishment for a mouth which had sung undeserved praises of a degenerate Akbar and burdened history with heaps of shameless falsehoods. Jahangir held Abul Fazl in great dread, knowing that he held Akbar's confidence. Fazl used to browbeat Jahangir and tick him off even in Akbar's presence in the supercilious manner of an elderly well-wisher. Conscious of Fazl's hypocrisy and cunning, Jahangir cultivated a hatred for the former. He says in his memoirs that, quote, while Fazl was with the Emperor Akbar, he dared not approach his own father Akbar, for fear that Fazl would prejudice Akbar against Jahangir by some insinuating remarks. Unquote. Thus, almost barred from approach to his own father, Jahangir plotted Fazl's murder. Fazl had all the vices that a man about a Muslim court could have. He was famous for his gluttony. It is said that exclusive of water, he consumed daily 22 seers of food. One seer is equal to 1.5 kilo. I am not sure. When he was away from Akbar as the supreme commander of the Mughal army in the Deccan, his table luxury exceeded all belief. In an immense tent, 1,000 rich dishes were daily served. Fazl had a foster father and 2 other brothers born of concubines kept by his father, Sheikh Mubarak. He had at least 4 sisters so far as is known. That Akbar considered Fazl of no importance may also be noted from Fazl's end. Akbar did not say even a word of reproach to his son Jahangir for having murdered Fazl, because he had any number of flatterers ever ready to curry favor with him, and therefore the loss of one did not matter much to him. Besides all European authors, Fazl's own contemporary Badayuni, who was Fazl's colleague at Akbar's court and a fellow chronicler, notes that, quote, Abul Fazl was an officious, time-serving, openly faithless, continually studying the emperor's whims, and a flatterer beyond all bounds, unquote. Thus, for most European authors, Jahangir and Badayuni are unanimous in certifying that Abul Fazl was a shameless flatterer. It is, therefore, that his Ain Akbari chronicle of Akbar's reign must be handled with great caution. There are many things that Fazl has skipped over or grossly misrepresented. Following in the footsteps of his elder brother Faizi, who used to compose poems in Akbar's praise, Fazl hit upon the idea of singing the emperor's praises in prose. Gradually and unwittingly, he found himself writing highly imaginative accounts of happenings at Akbar's court. These he would show to Akbar. The latter means Akbar, gratified in finding a flatterer who could effectively present his cruel and crafty deeds in an agreeable shroud of fabricated glory, to hoodwink the people at court and the general public, suffered Fazl to continue his literary fiction. Thus, both Akbar and Abul Fazl colluded in fabricating a fraudulent fabric of Akbar's reign, now known as Akbarnama or Ain-e-Akbari. In undertaking this labor of love, Fazl assured for himself a cozy and easy job at court, with all luxuries from kitchen delicacies to the proximity of a teeming harem at the royal court, thrown in for good measure. This occupation was also a good excuse for him to shun all field assignments where intrigues, incessant warfare, privations, and jealousies made life precarious. Staying at court, writing the emperor's panegyrics also ensured for him a strategic position from where he could make or mar the fortune of others, as well as retain for himself a favored key position with the emperor, so that he could always bask in the sunshine of imperial favors like modern political prostitutes. This consideration made Fazal more and more of a confirmed flatterer. With every passing day at court, Fazal matured into an expert at matching his fulsome flattery to the changing moods, fancies, whims, and requirements of Akbar. The resulting Akbarnama is therefore not a truthful account of Akbar's reign but a wishful concoction. All those who care for academic truth and hate falsehood must bear this in mind when handling Abul Fazl's, or for that matter any Muslim chronicle. In order that his cushy and strategic assignment may never end, Fazl kept inflating and expanding the chronicle into an interminable account of tents and samianas, bazaar raids, market gossip, court rumors, religious discussions, Akbar's concocted sayings, accounts of Toms, Dicks, and Harrys at court, and everything else seen, heard, or conceived. Like Penelope's wave, he never wanted the account to end until he or Akbar died. It is therefore that he never quotes any authorities, and his statistics about weight and measures, revenues, and bazaar rates are all contradictory and vague. Vincent Smith says in his book Akbar the Great Mughal, page 223 and 224, that, quote, I do not think it means Badayuni's appraisal of Fazl. So he says, I do not think it is far from the truth. Notwithstanding Blochmann's opinion to the contrary, the author of the Akbarnama and Aini Akbari was a consummate and shameless flatterer. Almost all matters considered detrimental to Akbar's renown are suppressed, glossed over, or occasionally even falsified. His books are one-sided panegyrics. Abul Fazl availed himself of the liberty allowed by his religion in his relations with women. He had at least the canonical 4 wives, unquote. Vincent Smith again says, quote, Abul Fazl displays unblushing partisanship in running down Berham Khan vis-a-vis Akbar, and even lavishes unstinted eulogies on Pir Muhammad, that worst of Akbar's evil counselor at this period, unquote. Here, Vincent Smith is giving another example. The same Abul Fazl who records that atrocious deeds of Maham Anga, the pimp priestess of Akbar's harem, slaughtering 2 beautiful abducted Hindu women detained in Baj Bahadur's harem, whom after defeating Baj Bahadur, Maham Anga's son Adham Khan sought to appropriate for himself, cocking of a snook at Akbar. An enraged Akbar journeyed all the way from Agra to central India to secure the entire harem of Baj Bahadur for himself. Adham Khan, the son of Mahamanga, being surprised by the emperor's unexpected visit, surrendered all women except the 2 choice beauties mentioned earlier. When Akbar was informed of it, he ordered that Adham Khan be brought to book. Maham Anga, who is made so much of in faltering accounts of Akbar's reign, had those 2 Hindu girls murdered in cold blood, villainously observing that dead women tell no tales, so that her son may be saved from Akbar's wrath, by pleading that the women concerned had not been retained by him but had died long back, was not ashamed to praise the wisdom and perspicacity of the guilty woman. Here, Vincent Smith is pointing out the duplicitous nature of Abul Fazl. Abul Fazl often refers to Maham Anga in glorifying terms such as paragons of virtue. Here, another example is given by Vincent Smith. Quote, Abul Fazl relates this horrid barbarity of Muhammad Mirag being tortured for 5 successive days by being tossed up in a wooden frame to be tossed and flung by an elephant without a word of censure, unquote. Example number 4, Vincent Smith says, quote, at Sahabad, midway between Thanesar and Ambala, on a tree adjoining Kot Kachwaha, Shah Mansur, Akbar's finance minister, was solemnly hanged on a charge of treason. Fazl suppresses the information that he was entrusted with the unpleasant duty of execution, which is known only from Montserrat, unquote. This adds a new dimension and a rare luster (sick) to Abul Fazl's versatile genius, for he has been earlier described as a womanizer, flatterer, and glutton, and now he turns out to be even a hangman. He was truly a minister since he ministered to every demand of Akbar. He was thus a perfect factotum ready to play any part at Akbar's bidding, from pen pushing to stabbing and hanging. There are thousands of examples like this. Abul Fazl met his death in the 52nd year of his age. Fazl, the theologian who had been the first to suggest to Akbar the idea of assuming the spiritual as well as the temporal guidance of his people, succeeded in 1574 AD by means of Quranic commentary in attracting the attention of the emperor. Having once entered on the road to advancement, he took good care to secure his continual progress. His favor at court became so marked that the Jesuits speak of him as the king's Jonathan. Incidentally, the fact that a study of the Quran proved to be Fazl's passport to Akbar's heart proves once again that Akbar had never ceased to be a fanatic Muslim. Vincent Smith says, quote, Abul Fazl's prose style, as read in Mr. Brevery's translation of Akbarnama, is intolerable to me. Simple facts are warped in a cloud of almost meaningless rhetoric, unquote. Even though Indian authors, on an average, are not so outspoken as European writers, where Muslims are to be appraised. And even though Dr. Srivastava's book titled Akbar the Great indicates that he has a specially soft corner for Akbar and Abul Fazl, yet even in his book, Abul Fazl has at times come in for adverse notice. Dr. Srivastava's reverence for Fazl and his fictitious and bogus Akbarnama is apparent from Dr. Srivastava's preface to his book Akbar the Great. The extremely learned author states, quote, Abul Fazl's Akbarnama must always remain in the most valuable primary source of Akbar's life and times, as its authors had made use of state records and other documents including the aid memoirs, which included verbatim everything that Akbar said or did, and which was recorded there and then by writers who were employed on this duty. These records and aid memoirs have unfortunately perished, but Fazl's works remains as it was without any diminution or interpolation. Vincent Smith was highly distrustful of Abul Fazl, whom he unjustly accused of deliberate perversion of facts and even of forgery, unquote. Who is saying this? Dr. Srivastava, the Indian writer. The extremely learned Dr. Srivastava is wrong in thinking that verbatim records of all that Akbar said or did were maintained in Akbar's time. The very fact that none of those records have come down to us should be an eye-opener. That those records have perished is as suspicious a plea as the one which maintains that Akbar built a mighty city called Nagarchen, which became so defunct within his own lifetime so as to leave not even the slightest trace of its location. Similar is the case with the Agra, which Sikandar Lodi and the Dillis, Humayun and Sher Shah are claimed to have founded. We hope students and teachers of Bharatiya history will not hereafter put pathetic faith in such fraudulent assertions. Since there were no records or aid memoirs, the question of Abul Fazl making use of them as reference material does not arise. Moreover, as a man engrossed in carnal pleasures and stooping to being an executioner of his colleagues to please his master and a shielder or murderers like Pir Muhammad and Moham Anga, Fazl was hardly the man who would take the trouble of basing his statements on court documents with a meticulous regard for truth, when his versatile imagination could devise and divine grandiloquent accounts of his master's fictitious glory. We therefore find Vincent Smith's appraisal more accurate. Perhaps even Smith felt the want of proper words which could express his agony on reading Fazl's academic perfidy that goes by the name of Akbarnama. Despite Dr. Srivastava's reverential awe of Abul Fazl's historical genius, he is constrained to record Fazl's style is somewhat involved and vitiated by his fulsome flattery of his patron, means Akbar, whom he considered a superman. It should be evident to anyone that an involved and devious style is always the product of a devious mind, which strives hard to bypass the bitter truth by circuitous statements, means indirect and roundabout statements, or tries to shroud it with the flurry of wholesome encomium. Secondly, it is unjust to Fazl to say that he believed Akbar to be a superman. Fazl was too shrewd a man of the world to take Akbar to be a superman. Fazl had correctly seized up Akbar as a vengeful despot, and as a shrewd man of the world, Fazl took care to remain on the right side of Akbar. That was the only way he could live, and live well under Akbar. Since Akbar had no dearth of flatterers, he hardly missed Fazl when the latter was murdered. Testifying to this, Dr. Srivastava remarks, quote, Akbar did not consider Fazl indispensable, did not always accept his advice, and more than once punished him publicly by forbidding him court. A small, unpretentious tomb was erected over Fazl's body, unquote. Even that triangular mound of brick and lime was not commissioned by Akbar but by some local Muslims. Even that was completely ignored, as is apparent from the fact that only about 60 years back some archaeology department official tried to locate Fazl's tomb, guided by vague historical description of the ambuscade. They came across a cluster of tombs all around, since in the 1000-year-long Hindu resistance to Muslim onslaughts, there are clusters of tombs found all over the country. The archaeological officials, by an academic fiat, arbitrarily identified one among several clusters of tombs as the one which should include Abul Fazl's tomb. The fact that one was half a foot or 1 foot taller than the others in that cluster of graves clinched the issue with them. That grave has since then been stamped in archaeological records as Fazl's, and official machinery was set into motion to maintain that grave. A small room was then built over the grave. We thus see how Akbar hardly cared even to mark the site where one of his much vaunted gems, Koilas, was murdered. Not to talk of raising a magnificent tomb, for which we are told Muslims had such a proclivity. This instance should further serve as a guide to historians to realize that the so-called palatial tombs are erstwhile Hindu palaces, temples and mansions which came handy for the burial of Muslim conquerors. In out-of-the-way places where no Hindu palaces or temples could be found nearby, as happened in the case of Abul Fazl, their ghosts had to remain content with unpretentious grave mounds. They were not as lucky as the ghost of Akbar, Jahangir, Mumtaz Begum or Humayun to get lofty Hindu edifices for their burial. When Jahangir exposed Fazl's hypocrisy to Akbar, the latter ostensibly frowned on Fazl. But Dr. Srivastava feels, quote, this was probably done to favor Salim means Jahangir. For the historian, Fazl was restored to favor within a few days, unquote. This is the proof of the collision between Akbar and Fazl. Dr. Srivastava's belief that Fazl was a historian is, however, misplaced and unjustified and a symbol of colonial mindset.